After the age of 60, your body stops producing nearly 50% of the hormones that once made you feel alive, connected, and desirable. Not just testosterone or estrogen, but oxytocin, dopamine, and even nitric oxide begin to fade. Slowly, quietly, these chemical messengers vanish, and with them goes the spark, the closeness, the warm pulse in your chest when someone touches you, or even looks at you that certain way. It doesn't happen all at once. That's what makes it so painful. One day, it's just a little less interest, a little less energy, a little more self-doubt. You still love your partner. You still want to feel close, but your body doesn't respond the same. And deep down, you wonder if that part of your life is simply over. My name is Dr. Edward. I've spent over 30 years working with older adults, and there's one truth I wish more people knew. Physical pleasure and emotional intimacy are not just for the young. They're part of health. They're part of healing, and they're absolutely possible, even into your 70s, 80s, and beyond. If you know how to support the systems your body still has. I remember Eleanor, a 68-year-old widow who sat in my office with tears in her eyes. "I don't miss the sex," she whispered. "I miss the feeling of being touched, and it meaning something." That moment never left me, because I realized what she missed wasn't an act, it was connection. She missed being reminded that she was still here, still desirable, still worthy of warmth. That's what this video is really about. Today, I'll be revealing 4 simple yet powerful ways to naturally boost your intimacy and pleasure after 60. You won't need any medications or expensive procedures. All you need is a gentle shift, sometimes in mindset, sometimes in daily habit, and often just in awareness. These methods are backed by biology, by practice, and by stories of real people I've worked with, just like you, who reclaimed a beautiful part of life they thought was gone forever. We'll explore the hidden links between what you eat and how you feel in your skin, the surprising role sunlight and breathing play in desire, and how one 5-minute ritual, done daily, can awaken parts of your nervous system long asleep. But before we go deeper, let me ask you something. Have you started telling yourself, "It's too late for me"? Have you settled for watching life instead of feeling it? If so, I invite you to stay with me, not just as a doctor, but as someone who's seen the spark come back again and again in people who simply learned how to light it. This is where we begin. The first way to rekindle intimacy is by touching without expectation. It began with a question that surprised me. A man named Thomas, 74 years old, looked me in the eye and asked, "Doctor, is it still okay to just want to hold someone, even if nothing happens after?" I nodded, and for a long moment, he didn't say a word. Then he told me something I've heard in many different forms over the years. Ever since Mary went through menopause, we stopped touching, not just in bed, everywhere. I don't remember the last time we hugged without feeling awkward. And there it was, one of the most common and painful truths I see among older couples. Touch slowly disappears, and with it, the bond. Science has shown that simple, non-sexual touch, holding hands, a warm hand on the shoulder, a gentle caress on the arm, releases oxytocin. This connection hormone calms the nervous system, lowers blood pressure, and strengthens feelings of trust and closeness. But here's what most people don't realize. Oxytocin declines sharply after 60, especially if we don't actively stimulate it. That's why many seniors begin to feel emotionally numb or physically distant, even when the relationship is still full of love. So the first natural way to reignite intimacy is deceptively simple. Reintroduce touch without any agenda. No pressure, no expectations, no finish line, just hands resting on one another during a movie. A palm gently placed on the back while walking through the garden. A 5-minute back rub at night, not to lead to anything, but to remind the skin and the heart that connection still lives here. I remember Eleanor, the widow I mentioned earlier. who eventually found a companion through a local poetry group. They were both in their 70s. On their third meeting, he reached out and simply held her hand as she read aloud. She told me later, "I hadn't felt that warm in years. My chest, it felt like it opened." That's what happens when oxytocin begins to flow again. It's not about performance, it's about presence. And that presence can reawaken sensations, desires, and confidence in ways that surprise people. Now, some couples worry that it might feel strange at first. That's okay. It's natural. Many have gone years without physical closeness, and the body forgets. But with just 5 minutes a day of intentional touch, without trying to go anywhere, you begin to rebuild the bridge. The body remembers, and once it does, the rest follows. In fact, there was a small study done at UCLA showing that couples over 65 who practiced what they called non-goal-oriented touching for just 10 minutes a day reported a 37% increase in overall relationship satisfaction and a 26% increase in physical intimacy within 6 weeks. So if it's been a while, start here. Start. Don't start with fixing your hormones or trying to rekindle passion. Start by sitting closer, by brushing their hair behind the ear, by simply placing a hand on their chest and leaving it there. It may sound small, but for a nervous system that's been starved of safe, loving touch, it can feel like a sunrise. Before we move on to the second natural way to boost intimacy and pleasure, let me ask you something. When was the last time you touched someone? Not to get anything, but to give safety, because sometimes the safest touch becomes the most seductive. The second way is to reawaken desire by fueling your body first. Harold never thought nutrition had anything to do with how he felt in the bedroom. At 72, he had accepted that fatigue, low mood, and a kind of flat-itch or gray feeling toward intimacy were just a part of aging. "I still love my wife," and he told me, "but I just feel invisible to myself, like the man I was is fading." So I asked Harold a simple question. "What did you eat today?" He smiled and said what many do. Toast, coffee, maybe some cereal. And if he was feeling fancy, canned soup for lunch. The truth hit him like a quiet wave. He was feeding his body to survive, not to feel. Here's what most people don't know. Your body needs certain nutrients, not just for muscles and energy, but for desire, zinc, magnesium, B vitamins, healthy fats. These aren't just for the gym. They're the building blocks of your libido, your mood, your dopamine. And when your body is undernourished, so is your intimacy. I explained to Harold that after 60, the body becomes less efficient at absorbing key nutrients, especially ones involved in hormone production. Testosterone, estrogen, dopamine, even the production of nitric oxide, which helps with circulation, begins to decline unless we actively support it. He was stunned. "So you're saying my breakfast could be part of the problem?" Exactly. So we made a small shift. I asked him to begin each day with a protein-rich breakfast, something with eggs, avocado, maybe a sprinkle of pumpkin seeds. We added a little dark leafy greens at lunch, some olive oil, and a few Brazil nuts each week for selenium. Within 2 weeks, he reported something unexpected. "I feel awake again, not just in my body, but to her. I actually found myself looking at my wife's neck and thinking about kissing her. It just came back." That's what happens when you fuel your body with intention. Desire isn't just a feeling, it's a physical process. And when you support the system, the signals return. One study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine found that older adults with higher levels of certain nutrients, like vitamin D, omega-3s, and zinc, reported more frequent and more satisfying intimacy, not because they took a magic pill, but because their bodies finally had the tools to support desire naturally. For women, healthy fats are especially crucial. Without them, estrogen levels plummet faster, and vaginal dryness and low arousal become more common. For men, a lack of magnesium and B6 can reduce dopamine, leading to low drive and emotional flatness. So the next time you open your fridge, ask yourself, is this food giving me life or just filling my stomach? Because when you nourish your body like it still matters, it starts behaving like it still wants to live fully, including in the ways that bring you and your partner close again. And it's not about becoming someone else. It's about coming home to yourself, one meal, one bite, one choice at a time. Now you might be wondering, what if I've done all that and still feel numb? What if the desire is there, but the connection is still missing? Then what you're missing might not be food or touch. It might be something deeper. Let's explore that next. The third way is to restore emotional intimacy through honest conversation. Her name was Marlene. She was 76. Graceful, articulate, always dressed in soft blue sweaters. But when she sat across from me during our first consultation, her eyes didn't sparkle, they hesitated. She spoke about back pain and insomnia, but eventually, after a long pause, she admitted what really brought her in. "I miss being wanted," she said, "but I think he stopped wanting me the moment I started hiding how I felt." Her husband, Richard, sat beside her, silent at first. Then he looked down and added, "And I stopped asking, because every time I did, she looked away." That moment stayed with me for months, because in that silence, between glances, between words, was the real reason most couples stop feeling close after 60. Not the body, not the hormones, but the things left unsaid. You see, intimacy isn't built in the bedroom. It's built in the living room, in the kitchen, on the walk to the mailbox. It's built in the small moments when one person dares to say what they need, and the other dares to listen without retreating. After decades together, some couples begin to avoid the conversations that matter most, not out of coldness, but fear. Fear of hurting feelings, fear of being seen as needy, fear that the desire won't return anyway. But here's what I've seen over and over in my years as a doctor. When emotional intimacy is restored, physical intimacy often follows on its own. I encourage Marlene and Richard to begin a practice I recommend to many of my older patients. Just 10 minutes, 3 times a week. Sit down, no phones, no distractions. One person speaks, the other only listens. They don't fix, they don't defend, they reflect. It's called mirroring presence, and it's simple. One says, "What I wish you knew is," or "What I miss is," and the other repeats it back, not to agree, but to hear. The first time Marlene said, "I miss being looked at," Richard replied, "You miss being looked at?" She wept. He hadn't realized how invisible she had felt, not because he didn't care, but because he hadn't asked, and she hadn't told him. That evening, she told me later, he reached for her hand without hesitation, for the first time in years. That's the power of being seen. Neuroscience tells us that emotional safety activates the same regions of the brain as physical pleasure. When you feel safe, you become receptive. You relax, you open, and your body, often unknowingly, prepares to connect. Many older adults believe they must solve the physical issues first, but so often, the physical follows the emotional. That's why Way 3 is about conversation, not just communication. It's about reclaiming the space where you feel heard, held, and honored, not just as someone's partner, but as someone with hopes, desires, and fears that still matter. So tonight, perhaps you begin with a simple question at dinner. What do you miss most that we used to do together? Or maybe, even more gently, what would make you feel close to me again? You might be surprised by the answers, or moved by the tears, but either way, you've just opened the door, and if you walk through it together, you may find that what was lost wasn't passion, but permission. And what happens when both the heart and the body are ready, but something inside still holds back? Something quiet, unconscious? Then it's time to look deeper into the hidden rhythms of the body itself. Let's explore that next. The fourth way is to awaken the senses by reconnecting with breath and rhythm. George never thought much about breathing. He was 79, a retired carpenter. Strong hands and soft eyes. But every night, he'd lie next to his wife, stare at the ceiling, and wonder why he felt so far away from her. "I want to reach out," he told me, "but something in me always freezes." I asked George to do something unusual. I didn't give him a pill. I gave him a rhythm. "Try this," I said. "Before bed, sit beside her, close your eyes, inhale slowly for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 6, and just listen to your own breath." He chuckled at first. "Breathing? That's it?" But the following week, his tone changed. "Something shifted," he said. "I don't know how to explain it. I felt calmer, less trapped in my head. And the next night, I reached for her hand without overthinking." Breath is the most ancient form of connection. It calms the nervous system, it anchors the mind, it regulates blood flow and gently raises nitric oxide levels, which improves circulation throughout the body, including to areas essential for intimacy. But even more than that, conscious breathing helps you arrive in the present, and intimacy, true intimacy, only lives in the present. That's why this final way to naturally boost intimacy is so deceptively simple, and yet so profound. Many seniors I've worked with have spent years disconnected from their bodies, not out of choice, but habit, the pace of life, the worries, the grief. All these create patterns of shallow breathing, tightened muscles, and a sense of being closed off. But when we breathe with awareness, when we allow ourselves to slow down, to feel, to soften, we reopen the doors to physical and emotional pleasure. We stop performing. We start sensing. One woman in her early 80s told me she began every morning with just 5 minutes of slow breathing and light stretching before breakfast. "It's nothing fancy," she said, "but I feel more alive, more ready to receive." And that word, receive, is the secret most seniors forget. After years of giving, caring others, it's time to return to the art of receiving. Receiving touch, receiving love, receiving pleasure, not as a luxury, but as a right. So if you feel distant, begin with your breath, not to fix anything, but to feel everything again. And as we close this journey, I want you to remember something that many forget. Intimacy doesn't fade with age. It fades with disconnection, and disconnection can be reversed. With a hand gently held, with a nourishing meal that honors your body, with a conversation that says, "I still want to know you," with a breath that brings you back home. If any part of you stirred while listening, if you remembered a time when connection felt effortless, or if you long to feel that again, I encourage you to share this video with someone you trust, a partner, a friend, a son or daughter who needs to understand what still matters to you. And if this brought you clarity or hope, I invite you to like, subscribe, and stay with us. Because this channel is not just about health, it's about living fully, even in the quiet chapters, especially in them. There's so much more we'll explore together, but for now, remember, you are not too old, you are not too late, and you are not alone. Your body still remembers how to love. Let it begin again.